Hello, hello, and welcome to our webinar this morning. My name is Katrina Udall, and I am Head of Marketing for RoboBuy. Today, we'll be discussing how you can start to improve your supply chain visibility leveraging AI. We'll be talking a little bit about data, multiple sources of data, and how to manage that. We'll also be discussing data quality and the importance of that to help you start your data foundation to leverage the value from AI. A few housekeeping things this morning. We will be running a Q&A session at the end today. So if you have any questions, please enter them into the Q&A, the question panel. And anything that we don't get the opportunity to respond to within the session today, we'll definitely be following up with you after the session. We'll also be recording this today, and we'll be happily sharing it after we finish. So jumping on to the next slide, I'd like to introduce our speakers today. We're fortunate to have Simon Ellis with us, who's our Chief Sales Officer. Simon comes with over 20 years experience in the banking sector, and he leverages this working with MasterCard, global banks and global organisations to help them improve spend visibility and also drive industry-leading B2B payment strategy. Now, unfortunately, Nitin is unable to join us this morning, our Chief of Data and Innovation, but we're fortunate to have Kedar Desai with us, who's our Head of Product at RoboBuy, and he works seamlessly with Nitin's team in data and innovation. Now, before we get into the seminar today, I was going to give you a quick overview, background of RoboBuy. So moving on to the next slide, a little bit of background on RoboBuy. We're a global fintech. We partner with MasterCard and global banks, as I mentioned, to drive B2B payment analytics and thought leading strategy with global banks and also global organisations. We're well known for our ability to interrogate large volumes of data quickly and easily. It's one of the reasons a number of our clients choose us is the speed and ease of which that process occurs. We also we leverage AI to accelerate value from spend and payments data. We've been rigorously training AI models for over 7 years. We'll share a little bit more about that today. We also use specialist third-party sources to enrich our data, something unique to RoboBuy. And we also have a data lake of over 1 trillion spend and payment data, which also adds a great deal of value to our AI engine. So without any further ado, we'll move on to the next slide, and I'll give you the floor, Simon. Thank you.
Thanks, Kat. And I feel a bit like Jim Carrey from The Truman Show. Sort of, I should be saying good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and good night. So we're based in Sydney, Australia. It is a very wet, windy, and somewhat miserable morning. But for wherever you're based, I hope this webinar finds you very well. And thank you for joining us today. So as you know, we're really focused on how AI can assist you on your journey across the procurement value chain. So if we move to the next slide, I think we shall dive straight into it. And the purposes of the next slide is to focus very much on some of the challenges that our customers have been discussing with us. So we'll wait for that slide to come up. There we go. So as Kat mentioned, RoboBuy itself has been operating for over 7 years now. We have over $1 trillion of B2B payments data in our data lake. We work with organizations of all sizes, from all industries, and across all regions, North America, the UK, the Eurozone. We've recently just started working with organizations in Africa and the Middle East, which is very exciting. And of course, Asia Pacific and here in Oceania. What we are hearing is a consistent message, and that consistent message post-COVID, post the the Russia-Ukrainian conflict, post-trade sanctions, etc., is that the visibility across the supply chain and the inherent risks across the supply chain are demanding pretty drastic action from organizations. So what we're seeing is a rapid reorientation of those supply chains to reduce that reliance on some of those locations, which could be perceived as high risk, whether that high risk is due to concentration of product, whether that is through some of, shall we say, the more geopolitical risks. And another number of organizations that we've been discussing have actually just been thinking about shortening their supply chains, even if that comes with an inherent increase in cost. The reliance on shipping and logistics and the inherent costs and the implications of, shall we say, Scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions on those logistical supply chains is a cause for concern. Some of the other challenges, and this has very much been driven predominantly by COVID, from what our customers are telling us, is aging technology infrastructure. And in our language, that's ERPs, Enterprise Resource Planning Systems. Since COVID and the dynamic ways of working now, as you can probably see over my shoulder, I am working from home at the moment. We are having to invest in technology which enables our teams to work remotely. So this has caused a drastic shift in organizations investing in their ERP technologies. So a migration to predominantly cloud-based ERPs has driven sort of a significant change in people's technology risk profile. And some statistics for you on that, just very, very quickly, Googling some of the stuff around that. So one of the statistics that I found says 1.4 million companies will spend over $185 billion on ERP software in 2024. Of those organizations, nearly 60% are looking to migrate to cloud-based ERP software. So software as a service, because of the flexibility that it is providing those organizations. And again, 60% are also suggesting that data is a key cause for concern as part of that migration. Okay. And 31% of those companies believe that integration and testing of that data is going to be one of their largest challenges. So why is that important to you? Well, this is something that RoboBuy can obviously assist. Although we are here to talk about AI in the supply chain, we are first and foremost a data company. Okay, so when you think about it, the importance of data, having the data in a quantifiable and accurate status to move, if you're looking to move your technology, is somewhere where a lot of organizations are helping or asking us for assistance. The next one is the ever increasing legislative demands of supply chain risk and compliance. Depending on where you're located, here in Australia, a lot of organizations are now having to focus on legislation called CPS 230. For the first time, large corporates are being asked to define who are their material service providers in their supply chain. The regulators are concerned about concentration risk to some of their most important corporates in the market, and recognizing that the service providers to those corporates, if they were to go down, if there was to be some sort of risk, the implications would be significant. DORA in the UK and in the Eurozone, very much the same concern, again, focused on risks in the supply chain, and we're all very much aware of modern slavery regulation. So therefore, organizations are being asked to identify and manage those inherent and residual risks across all tiers of their supply chain. Now, what does that actually mean for you guys? Well, what it means is that nearly half of every board meeting for large corporates now includes some discussion on supply chain risks. That includes, the implications of revenue and cost. damages to reputation, high-profile risks such as cyber, and of course, those adjacent risks such as ESG. And all of those are implicit in the supply chain. Of course, all of this is critical when it comes to your data. As you heard me say, the implications of cost. So therefore, another challenge our customers are discussing with us and how we can use data to unlock is the form of liquidity and working capital that is tied up in the supply chain. The high inflation that we have seen over the last 18 months, driven predominantly by government's response to COVID, has driven significant cost of capital issues. 2 to 3 years ago, when we were talking to our corporate customers, the weighted average cost of capital would be somewhere around 5% or lower. Now, working with our global banking partners and their corporate customers, across all regions, it's not uncommon to see weighted average cost of capital in excess of 10%. That is probably the first time it's got north of 10% in a generation, probably since pre-GFC. So organizations are now very much having to adapt very, very quickly to those rising costs, and therefore unlocking liquidity in the supply chain is critical. How do we unlock that liquidity? Well, understanding what are the preferences of your suppliers across the supply chain. How do they want to get paid? What is most important to them, and what is mutually beneficial for both organizations on the buy side and the sell side. One of the key components that we're seeing right now is, again, since the end of COVID, a dramatic increase in active discounts being offered by the supply chain. So this is where suppliers are basically submitting invoices with agreed payment terms, whether that's net 30, net 45, net 60 days. But they're basically saying, we will take a haircut on our invoice value, 2%, 3%, just to get paid faster. What is interesting to us, again, leveraging AI through the data, is that over 78% of organizations that we see through that data lake are not taking advantage of those active discounts. When we talk to them about it, it's purely a visibility thing. It is nothing to do with, we'd rather keep the money in our bank account. So it's purely about not seeing it and not being able to act upon it. And the final challenge that we will probably touch on a little bit today is trying to dispel the myth around these emerging technologies. If you are fortunate enough to invest in shares in an organization that has AI, I think NVIDIA would be a perfect example of that. You're probably sitting there with a very smug smile on your face. AI is everywhere. It is to 2023 and 24 what Bitcoin was 15 years ago. It is the absolute acronym of the day. I think it's important that we talk about the myths that are emerging around it, large language models, ChatGPT. A number of our customers are trying to work out how to make AI work better for them. And that's really what we're here to talk to you about today. So what I'll do is ask us to move to the next few slides. So at RoboBuy, we use AI technologies very much around natural language processing. So this comes to dispelling the myth. This is not Skynet. This is not Terminator. This is not a thinking machine that you can expect to make your coffee for you in the morning, although that would be lovely. We use natural language processing, and Kedar and the team have worked diligently for the last 7 years developing these models that allow the technology to interrogate and interpret specific description fields that are captured within most mainstream ERP systems. Okay, so it is a very, very specific piece of technology designed to do some very, very specific things. Okay, the way that our Chief Executive Officer describes it is we have built a classification engine on steroids. Okay, so this AI, natural language processing technology, is designed to read the description fields that come out of your ERP system around your supply chain. So things like your vendor master, the supplier name, the standard industry code that comes with that. Things like on the purchase order, the purchase order description field that your teams are raising when issuing those purchase orders out to the supply chain. The invoice description fields and each line item contained within that invoice that you receive back from your suppliers. And obviously, of course, things like your material master data and your general ledger data as well. By being able to read all of those fields and use the natural language processing to classify, therefore very quickly allows organizations to start to visualize the opportunities and the inherent risks across that supply chain. So some of the challenges, and you'll see we'll be able to share this spreadsheet, so I won't go into too much detail today, noting that we haven't got a lot of time, but these are the sorts of steps that organizations take when looking at the applications and the implications of AI training models across their data. So obviously starting to identify what those objectives are, assess their internal current capabilities. And this is really key for you, by the way. I cannot count the amount of times that we've come up with organizations that say that we have our own data lake. Fantastic. We have Power BI or Tableau or Click software for data visualization. Fabulous. Have no problems with any of that. I think that's great. The challenge that the organizations have is actually assessing the quality of the data itself. I think it comes back to the very technical term of garbage in, garbage out. Okay, if you have a data lake and if you've got data visualization tools, but the underlying data itself is poor, then I think this is where we're starting to see an opening for organizations to come in and further improve that data. Secondly, the integration of other data sources, organizations with multiple ERPs, organizations that want to take advantage of specialist data sources as well. How do you use all of the data that is out there to enrich those insights? I won't go into the right technologies, and obviously we're talking about developing and implementing those specific models. So we have a dedicated team that their sole job is to continue to refine those models. As I said, $1 trillion of data have now gone through those training models. So we're very proud of them, but that doesn't mean that we can't continue to test, evaluate, and optimize those data models. So that's one of the key components here when we're talking about that. We'll move on to the next slide, if we may. And the next one. Thank you. So what does that actually mean for you across the supply chain? A lot of organizations that we're working with in the supply chain right now are looking at training their data to a standard procurement and supply chain taxonomy. What does that mean? Basically, it is a standard library of goods and services that you buy from your suppliers. We at RoboBuy use the United Nations Standard Products and Services Code for our internal taxonomy, the UNSPSC, because we believe it is probably the most widely used, widely recognized, and probably the deepest taxonomy out there. It's about 160,000 products and services, and quite applicable. We've been training that data set and that taxonomy to our customers, which allows them to either map it to their own internal taxonomy, or we can create a hybrid, as you see there from point 3, where we can fill the gaps in their own internal taxonomy by filling it up with UNSPSC. Why is it important? Well, it's important to understand not only what you're buying, who you're buying from, and what are the implicit risks that could potentially come from that by being able to map those products and services into the critical value chains of your organization. Okay, which business units are buying which products to service which needs to deliver which goods and services to your customers. We're very fortunate in our customer set to be able to deal with organizations from manufacturing, health, retail, utilities, government, finance, and banking. And all of the metadata that is being captured in the very specific industry segments enables those training models to be far more accurate. I'll probably hand over to Kedar to take you through the next slide, and then we'll be pretty much getting into the questions section, as I know we are going to be running out of time pretty quickly. Over to you, Kedar.
Thank you, Simon. So AI classification is a comprehensive process where the AI models ingest the data. In case of procurement, we ingest source systems data, multiple ERPs data, which essentially covers the description fields, which are invoice descriptions, purchase order descriptions, master data, where you have your general ledger descriptions, which essentially describes what commodity has been bought. And we first, after ingesting, we compress the data, which essentially called as a cleaning process, where you get rid of the noise words, you get rid of the words which essentially going to deviate the AI from the actual categorization. So after cleansing activity is performed, we identified the similar looking patterns from the data, which is indeed very critical to identify a relationship between the common words and with the final categorization. It could be either UNSPSC categorization or the custom code categorization. So AI models, it could be SVM, it could be decision tree, it could be string grouper, are being chosen depending on how the probability is established between the descriptions in the code. And as we have a huge across the domains, we have a huge set of data lake with us. Our models have been trained to identify different patterns in the data corresponding to a lot of different varieties of domains. So once the model establishes the relationship between the cleansed and compressed data with the categorization, it will start splitting the data and identify those right categories and establish the relationship between the descriptions and the code. Large language modules or the string groupers helps to identify the unseen pattern of data and categorize it very easily. So once it's implemented and maintained, it will also successfully identify the unseen pattern of any ERP data, like delta vendors, delta descriptions, or any new patterns which are coming from the incremental data into the models. It will immediately establish the relationship using the probability algorithms, which are part of the decision trees and other AI models, and then classify that data correctly. The more we use these models on large set of data, we can get more granular in the UNSPC to level 3 and level 4, which indeed is going to help to have a higher visibility of your spend. So as in more and more data goes into the system, it makes system more enriched and it makes your categorization and visibility more and more clear. So, and it's scalable. So larger the data, it improves the accuracy because that is how the decision tree works. And that is how the string groupers or other AI model works. So yeah, so it continually keep improving as in when we continuously start feeding the data into it, and it improves the accuracy accordingly. That's it, Simon. So we can move on to the next slide.
We'll move on to the next. So how do we get started with this? And again, today is very much about understanding what are the potential opportunities around the services that you can expect from a data-centric organization. We very much welcome a number of customers who are actually helping us inform and adapt our technology to the myriad of needs that they have. Just recently, we're working with an organization based out of Brussels to focus very, very specifically on their master data management. So we need to be very adaptable around what are the needs that are coming in from those organizations, whether it's supply chain, whether it's risk, whether it's compliance obligations, or whether it's simply something as simple as visibility. What we'd very much like to do, if you are open to it, is provide a demonstration of the capabilities. If it's not RoboBuy, if you're looking at other organizations, then we'd very much suggest that it's important to you to actually really have a look and a feel of what those products look like. Are they intuitive? Are they easy to use? Depending on your organization's requirements, are you based in a single location? Are you across multiple regions, multiple countries? Do you have staff that have multiple language requirements? You know, can all of those capabilities be serviced? So with the RoboBuy capability, from the moment our customers have a demonstration, accept a proposal, and we start a project kickoff with them, to the moment they can actually have a platform in their hands with their own data having been assessed, cleansed, classified, and enriched through our training models, can be less than 10 days from the moment their data is uploaded. About 3 months ago, we worked with a very large financial institution in the United States who provided us in excess of 36 billion US dollars of data in RoboBuy's format and schema. And we were able to provide the fully updated platform back to them within 72 hours. So it kind of gives you an idea of the technology. And I think that's probably one of the real benefits that we maybe haven't really talked about this morning around AI, is the speed. The speed is the key piece here. If we can deliver that capability back to organizations at a low cost, at an effective requirement, I think that's one of the key pieces here. So again, without further ado, I will probably hand back to Katrina, because I think we've probably discussed enough from my perspective. So we shall just finish off, noting that we've got 2 minutes left in the session.
Thanks, Simon. And thanks, Kader. Thanks for all the information provided today. We've had a number of questions come in, but I will just ask one of the pair of you very quickly, probably to you, Simon. We get a lot of people come to us at different stages of their journey. What would you say is the greatest challenge we face with organisations that come to us?
A very good question. I think the biggest challenge that we probably face is the assumption of the quality of the data. A lot of organizations feel that they need to work on their data first before they give it to us. I think the amount of times we've been in conversations with customers that are going, "Oh, I really can't give you our data because it's just too bad. It's too dirty, it's too poor. We're going to need to spend some time working on it before we can give it to you." And I think that's one of the biggest misnomers that we have right now, which is very much around give it to us in its rawest, purest form, and allow us to leverage, obviously, what we have built and developed over the last 7 years. And I think you'll be surprised at how quickly we can show some of the real value from the system.
Great. Thank you. And it's interesting, we were doing some customer reviews recently, and definitely one of the main reasons our customers come to us is for our abilities around data, and definitely the speed that you talk about as well. And I think the fact that the ease and the speed are things that come through from our customers all the time. So we will end that webinar there. We thank you again today for your time that you've spent with us, and we look forward to sharing this information. When we send through the information, you'll see that there are email addresses within the deck, so please feel free to reach out to us. We're very happy to answer any additional questions that that might arise, or if you share this with your teams as well. So thank you very much, and we'll be in contact.
Thanks, everyone. Have a
Thank you.
wonderful day. or a nice
Bye.
evening. Take care.
Take care.